Welcome to Magic.ai, the operating system for hospitality. At Magic, we know an operating system is more than just software and systems. It's about people, because hospitality is nothing without them. So supporting the hospitality community is our number one goal.
I think there needs to be more of a support system. Like, you have to love this business and you have to love every aspect of it, including sharing tribal knowledge on what is successful and also tribal knowledge of what is a failure.
Founded by lifelong experts, we're building the place where everyone in hospitality, from seasoned pros to first-timers, can gather, share, and grow together. Plus, we're crafting scalable tools and AI-supported software to boost your business. Dive into our vibrant community platform packed with meaningful conversations and robust tools and templates designed just for you. Need more? Our custom software solutions have got you covered. From recruiting and staffing to digital playbooks and dashboards, we're working on building a unique hub of resources unlike any other. Magic is your single point of origin for important conversations, accessible tools, valuable insights, and more. Join us at Magic.ai. The evolution of hospitality is here.
I think the biggest challenge for operating multiple units is finding the ability to manage in a way or lead in a way that enables all of us to arrive at a goal together, and then along the way, hopefully have the individuals reach their goals as well.
Michael Fojtasek is the founder and executive chef of Maybe Hospitality, housing a growing portfolio of Central Texas restaurants, including Olamaie and Little Ola's Biscuits, Redbud Ice House, and Gimme Burger. Michael has also recently teamed up with Austin-based independent hospitality group New Waterloo to lead the food and beverage program at Butler Pitch and Putt and serve as executive chef for both the South Congress Community Chop House Mayday and upcoming Albert Hotel in Fredericksburg, Texas.
The best way that I have found to continue serving product and service that is successful for us is the leadership teams, is that tenacity from myself. Those are the things that I've had. The places that I have struggled, to be open and honest, have been in costs, in finances, in these types of spaces. And now I have resource and assistance with them. And so it's enabled me to appreciate myself a little bit more, and it's given much better results. Olamaie turned 10 on August 24th,
Wow.
Which is
Good for you.
Thank you. And it's,
Impressive.
I got the team together before we started. We'd had a little cocktail party to celebrate, and I got the team together beforehand. And I said to him, I want to be honest, I was maybe arrogant enough when we opened to believe that we would get here to 10. But what I wasn't maybe smart enough to understand was that it was going to be as hard as it was. I mean, it was incredibly challenging. And I think that, I think my connection to my mother and my grandmother and my daughter probably helped me sustain some of that effort during the challenges. My mother and my grandmother were a huge part of my life. I lived with them until I was 9. And food culture for us was always a very important part of our dynamic. I recall food experiences with my grandmother, and I think a lot of chefs talk about this, but they were very not conventional towards what you would think a chef would end up experiencing. I remember watching MASH and eating Nighthawk TV dinner, and that was regular. And so, and then my mother remarried, and we moved in with my dad, and the food experience has changed. I went from those types of experiences to cooking at home with them, and having that be part of our process and part of our family dynamic that was successful for us. And to be open and honest, a lot of our dynamic was not successful. And so the food portion of it felt to me like a place for us to connect. And so Olamaie is, I think, a representation for me of all of those ideas and that experience and journey.
And all the positive things from your childhood that you remember, that the
Yeah,
connection over food was positive and taking that forward.
exactly. I think that, for me, um, my experience as a young cook was very similar, and as a chef eventually, it was very similar to my experience on sports teams. That was a space that I had a great deal of success as a child. And so, yeah, the kind of confluence of my family background, having good experiences around food, and then the, the ideas are in the kitchen, or maybe the strategies in the kitchen being similar to sports, and how those felt like a good experience, like something I could lean into.
Mm. So now you're just part of a different sports team, this big hospitality group, and you have several restaurants under the Maybe Hospitality Group. Um, what I know you talked about how challenging the past 10 years of running Olamaie was. What are the biggest challenges that you've encountered? This is a big question, in managing multiple restaurant locations, and how do you address them?
I think the biggest challenge for operating multiple units is, you know, um, finding the ability to um, manage in a way that enables all of us, or lead in a way that enables all of us to arrive at a goal together, and whether, a common goal, and then along the way, hopefully, have the individuals reach their goals as well.
Sure.
I would say that, and coupling that with, you know maintaining a standard of excellence, while not being able to be present or do everything yourself.
Mhm.
We I'm kind of the last of the generation of chefs who came from kind of yelling kitchens and these intense environments, and um, I made a conscious decision to change that about how we operated many years, probably about 8 years ago, and those were tools that were very effective to accomplish what I'm talking about, using fear um, and intensity to arrive at a goal was very similar to my sports experience. And so, the last 8 years have been about growth to learn how to do it differently than that, to accomplish results that are good for everybody. And I'm still learning. I still make mistakes. I still um, have I still need to work on myself every day. I see a therapist every week, and I have begun, taking care of myself over the last few years better than I had previously, um, and so, and then, really taking stock of my strategies as a person, over in the most recent period, and what is serving me, what is serving the team, and how can I move forward in a positive way, and change some things about myself that don't work.
So you have some strategies about sort of being the best leader that you can be, right, to lead your team, which of course is wonderful. Um, but you were talking about sort of the ability to maintain excellence across the board, or that you can't have your hands in everything all the time, or you can't have your eyes on everything all the time. Is it about recruiting the right people to lead these different enterprises? Is it about managing those people correctly? Is it about communicating your goal or your collective goals? Is it all of the above? Sort of. I just want to get some of the little slightly more practical, that we could get some practical takeaways.
Yeah, I do. I think it's all of the above. I think that, it does. It starts, well, I think that it starts with what you put out in the world. I think it starts with who people perceive you as. I think that you attract certain types of candidates by being a certain type of way. And I think that For instance, the chef at Olamaie now is a young woman who's incredibly talented, who's worked all over town at kind of the best restaurants in Austin. And when I went to ask her to join the team, it was pretty clear that she had a perception of me that enabled me to open up that conversation. And so, we had for years tried to be as progressive as we could about how we compensate the teams, how we lead in our community, how we engage with nonprofit, and those types of things. And then, yeah, once we've hired them, finding ways to motivate and finding ways to have how do I say, like, have these goals that people agree to and then execute on and follow through. I think follow through is one of the hardest things that any of us can accomplish. It requires so much tenacity, and within that tenacity, when you remove the fear and the intensity, it can be much more kind of tiring or to continue that work. And so you really have to work on yourself to be as sturdy as you can to accomplish that. And so, yeah, I think it starts with the hiring. I think that good leadership skills and mentoring good leadership skills into those folks. And then, yeah, I would say, yeah, and then continuing to build on the relationship in a positive way is really building trust and building an understanding that you are going to show up and try to help.
And you have this kind of unwavering standard for the quality of product that you put out. And I can say that firsthand because I've been fortunate enough to cook alongside you. And now I kind of look at the breadth of what you're doing, and I go to these websites and these pages and try to get a sense of kind of, what's happening there. And I look at the execution, and it's like, it is Olamaie, I guess, in some way. Like, I'm seeing a lot of the same focus and deliberate intent and approach on like these menus and how they're written, right? And how they read, and the food that is represented by the photography that I see, all these sorts of things. And I'm kind of thinking to myself, how have you set yourself up through any kind of, systems, or how do you optimize your resources to make sure that you can pull off, right, kind of your signature style and attention to detail in what appears to be a group of very different and eclectic businesses under one umbrella?
Yeah, it's been, my strategy around kind of maintaining our presence and our ability to execute. People ask me, what is your day-to-day like? And it used to be my day-to-day was really simple. It was, I got up, I had a coffee, I went to Olamaie, I cooked for 10, 12 hours and turned around and came home, and you knew where to find me. These days, I'm in on any given day, I can be in 3 or 4 different operations. And I would say that, the best way that I have found to continue serving product and service that is successful for us is the leadership teams, is that tenacity from myself. I've brought on a business partner in the last 2 years. And also we have a culinary director who has worked with us since March of 2020. And those two folks really support me and really helped me carry out the vision for the food. And I, in turn, work to turn around and carry out the vision for the aspects of the business that they manage. I am finally in a place where I get to embrace the things about me that have, I think, made me somewhat successful is creativity and leadership skill. And I think that those are the things that I've had. The places that I have struggled, to be open and honest, have been in costs, in finances, in these types of spaces. And now I have resource and assistance with them. And so it's enabled me to kind of appreciate myself a little bit more, and then therefore lean into that stuff. And it's given much better results in that way.
So does your partner does more of the business, food cost, that kind of work, and you concentrate more on the creativity and leadership? Is that how the roles are split?
That is. So,
Okay.
So his name is Ben Fordham. He's British. He came from London. He went to University of Texas Law School. And that's how he ended up in Austin, and fell in love with Mexican food, moved back to London, tried out being a barista for a while, and then ended up opening a taco shop called Benito's and expanding to 10 units, and then selling it and coming back to Texas. So
cool.
Yeah, his wife is from Texas. And so, yes, we share a lot. Our overlap is really in the space of leadership skill. He's a great leader. We have a lot of the same ideas around how we operate. I think, initially that's what drew us to each other. But yes, I handle kind of creative along the lines of food and some design work and stuff like that, and he handles a lot of the numbers and those ideas too.
Okay, so in sort of doing some initial research on you and how you operate your businesses and such, I came across, it was pretty easy to see that that it's important to you to treat your people well. And after COVID, there was a shift in benefits for your employees. And so, as I read, they received higher pay, health insurance, paid sick leave, and vacation time. I'd love to talk about what drove that decision and how these changes have affected your restaurant or restaurants, plural.
Yeah. We, I think that, like everybody, the pandemic was a moment of reflection and a moment of asking a lot of questions around, are we doing this in a way that serves us, or are we doing this in a way that serves the teams? And I always have wanted to be progressive in every way around restaurant operations and in general, and I have wanted to be a progressive employer. Prior to the pandemic, we did offer health benefits to the team. But once the pandemic happened, we really took stock of how we accomplished that. We thought a lot about how the structures work. And so, yeah, we've taken on strategies like the employee wellness charge at Olamaie, which effectively is an auto-grat. If people push back, we'll take it off. It doesn't happen very often. But that's probably because we're very communicative about it. We talk about it at the table. We have an insert in the menu that talks about it, as well as on the receipt. And so there's a lot of communication to the guests in order to accomplish that. And it turns people away, to be honest. There are plenty of people here in Texas who have not maybe understood how restaurant metrics work, and how tip culture works, and what it means effectively to just raise prices. The challenge of raising prices. Everyone who's listening probably knows it's just giving half of the team a raise and the other half a raise too, but not as much. And you continue this disparity, and no one ever really, or very few people get the opportunity to understand how that works. And so that's our strategy that we've chosen to take it on, and it can be very disheartening to read some comments, but what it's yielded for us is we have very little turnover at Olamaie, and but for instance at the first biscuit shop when we went brick and mortar there, we tried to do that there, and the guests, it's a $10 biscuit sandwich, and the guests just wouldn't have it. It was in every review. It was across the board. Why am I having to pay this? I don't understand. And so we took it off. So yeah, sometimes, being progressive is listening and finding another route to accomplish those benefits if the other route hadn't worked. And so, at Little Ola's, what we ended up doing is grinding on costs more, and trying to find the spaces on the balance sheet where we could create that opportunity rather than continuing to get beat up around the concept that because in a quick service restaurant or a fast casual or any of those styles of concepts, you have probably 20 seconds to get as much hospitality into the interaction as you have 2 hours at Olamaie to do.
Yep.
And so it is so hard to build that trust and relationship in 20 seconds.
Right.
And it is so much easier in 2 hours. Granted, there's plenty of hard stuff about the other side too.
Yeah.
But the reality in the quick service or in the fast casual is that you have to be very efficient and you have to be very clear.
And so this has been a great exercise for you, I think, in pushing your personal limits with the amount of different businesses that you're involved in. And yet it's also been a little bit comfortable because it's kind of all been within arm's reach, right? Like Townsman, we instituted a flat fee 3% on every bill. Our intention at that time, and we were really, I think arguably definitely the first restaurant in Boston, but probably within the Northeast to do something that aggressive at that time, was...
What year is this?
This was 2014. It was intended to be what we called a living wage. So it was a living wage increase for back of house employees. And it just helped address that disparity that Michael was talking about earlier in terms of trying to level the playing field a little bit between front and back of house. We went through a lot of iteration. I mean, that was like a stressful moment. And I'm sure Michael's been in similar situations where what the right thing to do is. You're concerned about the perception. You have to kind of listen to your inner voice and do what's right. But then it becomes a matter of, okay, well, then we've made the decision. Now, how do we carry it out? And I think that's the part that's always the trickiest because it involves hyper levels of communication, both with your own team, but also with your guests, with the management, with the press, all of it to really make sure that there's kind of a fully baked idea before all of a sudden the typeface hits the menu. And that's like actually a much bigger lift than people think about. And so we had to really make sure that we got alignment internally about what we were doing and why, and had communication go out to our team so that everybody knew how to communicate it to the guests at the table, like the whole thing.
Right. Yeah.
I will say that, I mean, similarly, right? Like we faced backlash. I can't believe you're just adding an extra 3%. Am I supposed to tip now on top of that? Like, what am I tipping you for if you're also going to be charging me? Like all the things that everybody hears who does similar living wage increases. but that was a minority, I think. Like the majority of the response was overwhelming and supportive, and recognized, particularly in that moment in Boston, because of the cost of living increases that everybody was experiencing, that it was not sustainable to try and, staff your restaurant with cooks who are forced to live an hour outside the city because they can't afford to live in town, and they have to take public transportation, and all of these things compound on itself. So I think overall, like it was definitely the right thing to do. We were proud we did it. We were proud to be one of the first. And I think because of that inertia that existed behind the conversation, and also our ability to kind of just really be upfront with it and just be like, okay, and resolute as a team, like allowed us to kind of pull it off. Right. And so it lived on, and it did its thing. And it was one of the things I was most proud of in that restaurant, for sure. But it was hard, for sure hard.
So can I ask a question as someone who has never run a restaurant, for both of you? What would make you decide something like adding a 3% flat fee versus adding 20% auto-gratuity? Like what are you taking into account there for the benefits for your employees and the perception or effect that it has on the guests?
Well, I'll just say quickly to follow up what kind of on my comments, which was, it was an intentional additional 3% for us because we wanted to pull the veil off of the inequity that existed between pay scales in front and back of house, and kind of lead with that conversation, right? So we certainly could have done an auto-grat, but somehow I feel like a 20% auto-grat felt more disingenuous than it would have to just be like, hey, listen, this is the situation. Like, this is, as our guests, you trust in us for the experience. You trust in us to provide to our employees. Now, at the end of your experience, it's time kind of for everybody to come to the table, right? I think that's how I looked at it, anyways.
And I totally, I don't deserve any credit for taking on this style of compensation here in Austin. One of my closest friends, Fiore Tedesco, and his partner Adam Orman over at Locadoro, they opened up with a 18% auto-grat and did it for years. And I remember when I started on this, when I started on the idea of what is, okay, we need to charge a fee, because I wanted to offer health insurance. This was, kind of 2018. I really wanted to offer health insurance. How was I going to pay for it? Okay, I want to do 2 or 3%. That'll do it. And I felt really comfortable having a conversation with the guests and having them be open, and felt good about it. And I went and I was sharing a meal with Fiore, and I told him that this was a strategy that we were going to take on. And he said to me, it's like, man, I wish you would join us and come all the way. And, when he said that to me, I kind of looked at him and said, man, I wish I could too. And I just didn't feel comfortable. And I think that's the pandemic came. And when we came out of it, it was like, okay, let's really embrace this larger idea, because it will give us more resource to do more. And we felt like at the time that guests had a behavioral change around tip culture that might stick.
Yeah. They really did. Yeah.
Yeah.
The pandemic really changed the way that if you haven't listened, there's a daily episode, the New York Times podcast, about how tipping culture has changed and sort of why it's everywhere at the moment. And they credit credit the pandemic and when we would go out to food places and people were still making our food even though there were restrictions, and we felt this compassion and gratitude, overwhelming gratitude for people who were making our food. And so tipping really started to become a way to show our gratitude for people who were making sacrifices during this really just unprecedented time. And so I think you're right. I think people's culture and behavior really changed around tipping then.
Yeah, and so we thought, okay, let's take no, that's not it. Let's dovetail with this and and really and try to be progressive around it and try to get in front of it. And so we changed the way that everyone is paid a base rate in the restaurant, and that enables us. Everyone starts at $15 or more. And that enables us to move that auto-grat in a way that we feel is appropriate. 100% of it goes to the team. None of it goes to the business. But the way that it goes to the team is healthcare, and additional wages. And so those are the two ways that the auto-grat gives us coupled with the base rate gives us the opportunity to do those things.
Yeah. So I was saying earlier that this has been a great experiment for you and your expansion because everything has been local and you've been able to kind of run between units and put fires out as necessary as business owners do. But you're about to take your first foray out of Austin, and you're going to be collaborating with the Albert Hotel in Fredericksburg. I think it's set to open in just a few months, and you must be kind of right in the thick of preparation for that. So I'd love to kind of hear about how you're involved in that project and how that's been for you and what this next level of kind of business strategy looks like for you.
Yeah, we are where this Albert was forecasted to open in March of 23. And so we're protracted there. And that's been a challenge for everyone. It was related to, getting a building built in Fredericksburg, which is for people, it's about 70 miles west of Austin. And it's a historic town, and there's a really strong German culture there. And so, fortunately, I've done some work with New Waterloo, our partner there, and the hotel operator at Mayday on South Congress, and we've learned so much about how to work together. And so, I have learned that we need to be more measured on the way in. We need to, I said to the general manager of the hotel the other day, I said, look, when we open this hotel, I will be here intensely. I will be here more than I will be the rest of the time in our agreement. And it's very important that the work that I do here is instilled into this team and becomes part of this culture. Because if we don't get it right out of the gate, it's going to be so much harder to get it done in the long run. And so that's what I'm really focused on right now, around making sure that the time that I do spend there is effective, so that when I'm moving on to hopefully just oversee and keep checking in, that those processes, those systems, those strategies and culture have become part of who they are. And so, yeah, I am current. It's amazing. All of this business growth is coupled with a period of very intense self-reflection for me. I've got a lot going on personally that I need to explore and change about myself. And I believe that if I continue to do this work, that I will be a better business person. It's really stemming from wanting to be a better partner and parent. But I believe that changing some of the strategies that don't work for me, that exist from my background, are going to enable me to be a better operator and be able to lead from afar in a much more effective manner.
And you've been better equipped, or you are better equipped, I would argue, now more than ever, not just because of what you've gone through professionally and the growth that you've experienced that's been kind of intentional, I think, in a way, in terms of slow growth, I guess you could say, right? Or thoughtful growth, right? But also because you're also going through some personal growth. And I think, there's a lot of wellness stuff that I'd love to get into with you. You're sitting here in front of us with your hair dripping on your shoulders, which means you just got out of the shower this morning, which means I know in my head you probably just finished a run. You have turned your physical self into a whole new being. That is probably something that I would love to cover with you on a whole nother podcast, because I think it could be so fascinating for people in this industry and be super inspirational. But tell us quickly kind of, where you're at right now with that stuff.
Oh man. Well, firstly, I just want to acknowledge the inspiration that I got from you. Watching you change yourself and make decisions that I perceive as healthy for you have really inspired me. So yeah, for me, I got home one night from working dinner service, and I was drinking 3 fingers of bourbon and smoking 6 or 7 cigarettes and marijuana and all that stuff, and I was reflecting on how I had yelled at a cook, and I realized that cook was probably doing what I had done when I got yelled at, which was go to the bar, have a beer, and talk story. And so I thought, okay, you're hurting yourself, you're hurting this, but you're hurting everything doing it this way. And so that was the beginning of it. And today, yes, running, I did, you're right. I just ran 10 miles this morning. I'm in the middle of a 60-mile week. I have a race coming in 3 weeks, that, has become part of my kind of self-care, is that, getting out on a run, making sure that I get it done, enables me to feel accomplished. I feel better physically. I don't, alcohol is not a big part of my life. It's really served me in a way that has enabled me to feel better about myself, which is really what helps me be a better leader.
100%. Yeah. It changes your perspective for sure. For sure. There's so much we could get into there, and I would love that chance. So maybe I can twist your arm to come back at some point and we can dive into wellness. Who is the one person that you hired that has transformed your business?
The one person that I've hired that has transformed my business, that's really tough. I would say my business partner coming on was for me a huge transformation. We went from kind of what I would consider kind of a back of the napkin organization to like actually having some real ability to have observable metrics, manageable kind of financials that we understand.
Yep.
What's been the most successful marketing decision you've made for your business?
Well, the most successful marketing decision I've made, I think, is to be who I am and try to be honest about who we are and what we put out into the world. I think authenticity, really leaning into our authenticity, and Matt used a word earlier, but thoughtful is really a core. It's a word for us that we use daily. So being thoughtful, about how we represent ourselves and trying to be authentic in that way is our best marketing decision.
All right. The last one is on tools and software, but it can be really anything you want. What is the one tool that you use every day? And that can be something you hold. It can be, anything.
I think our greatest tool is, we have these, end of night reports that we receive from every business. Those are, and we take a lot of, or we use a lot of our energy to ensure that those communications are thorough and thoughtful and representative of what's actually happening in the spaces. Because I generally can keep up with what's going on in the restaurants through those documents, and a lot of our success is through paying attention, reading them thoroughly, making sure that whomever's writing them knows that we read them, responding, asking questions, and then also like teaching them strategies. Like when in that report, saying, "Hey, the oven door is sticking." It leaves it open for everyone, and so the training is, the oven door is sticking, and I'm going to make a phone call to the person to fix it. And just that one more sentence, but that is a coachable moment, and that's a real pathway towards success for everybody.